The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series. I'll wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join, and then I'll start the webinar.
Nefeli, this is Dave. Just so you know, the little webinar reminder on your screen is coming through on the broadcast if you want to close that out.
Thank you, Dave. I didn't see this because it was behind the webcam window. All right.
I had a feeling.
All right. So I guess we can get started. So good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar series. My name is Nefeli Bompoti. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an assistant research professor at the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the University of Connecticut, but I also serve as the project manager for the Yukon TAB program. So today's webinar is, the topic is on how to develop a brownfield inventory. We'll go over specific tips and methods on how to develop a good brownfields inventory for your communities. The webinar is recorded and it will be uploaded later on our website at tab.program.yukon.edu. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the questions box, and we will make sure to address those at the end of the webinar. So today's outline, we'll go first. We'll introduce the Yukon tab and what our services are with respect to helping communities on brownfields redevelopment, and then we'll go over the methodology of how to develop a brownfields inventory. And at the end, I'll leave a little bit of time for your questions. I'll make sure to answer all your questions. And of course, if you do have other questions, you can also, reach out to me after the webinar through email or through a call. So our TAB program out of the University of Connecticut, essentially we are funded by the EPA to serve all communities in New England, all 6 New England states, and help communities with their brownfields redevelopment to basically advance investigation, cleanup, and redevelopment of brownfield sites, and protect public health and promote environmental justice. So our program offers a variety of services, and just to give you a very brief overview of how we can work together and how we can work with your communities to promote brownfields redevelopment. First of all, the first pillar, let's say, of our services has to do with providing direct technical assistance. So, for example, if you have questions, specific questions on like technical issues, on like grant writing, we do support EPA grant proposals through our program. We do answer technical questions, provide templates, provide reviews of like technical documents. You can reach out to us and we can discuss specific on your project and lay out a plan on what kind of assistance you might need and how we can help you with that. The other part of our program is it's called Municipal Assistance Program. What that is, we basically open a request for proposals, usually twice a year. We're thinking of like doing this 3 times a year now, to have communities participate in our service-based course activities at UConn and support technical projects and grant writing projects through our municipal assistance program, where essentially community participates into the program and receives assistance free of charge. The other part of our services is essentially continuing education. So our webinar series, we also plan to have workshops and short courses to basically cover different topics of brownfields redevelopment. And then, of course, the last but definitely not least has to do with community engagement. So we do work with the School of Social Work here at UConn to engage the communities and also draft a community engagement plan. So if you're interested in our services, first of all, you can find more under our website, but you can also, again, reach out to us and have a discussion on what is that you would like to work on in your communities. We work basically with all different kinds of entities, from, let's say, municipalities, from regional planning organizations, state and tribes, but we also, we can work directly with the community, like engage citizens, so like in neighborhoods. So basically we, our goal is to have equitable representation of all New England entities within the 6 New England states and tribes. And we also know that there is a lot of geographic diversity within New England, so we basically try to engage both rural and urban communities, smaller and larger towns and also cities, and of course prioritizing environmental justice communities where there is additional need. So to our topic today, how to develop a brownfield inventory. First, we would like to start by thinking, okay, well, what is a brownfield inventory? What is the format that we see? You can basically find an inventory that it could be just a list of sites using, for example, an Excel spreadsheet, or it could be a web-based list. It could also be a report where it has a more detailed information of the brownfield sites. It could also be in a form of a GIS map, a web-based GIS map, or a GIS map that you have, a shapefile or something like this. So basically, all these different formats, we do consider them as a brownfield inventory, and the detail of the inventory, of course, depends on the purpose, on the purpose of having the inventory for your community. So to take a step back and think about what could be the benefits of having a brownfields inventory in your community. First of all, we say that having a good inventory is actually the step 0 for a community to start redeveloping their brownfield sites. So identifying properties where, blighted properties within your neighborhood, within your town, it's actually the first step of doing something about them, going after, and the next step is to basically going after, okay, how do we start the environmental investigation process? How do we clean up the properties, and how do we actually, reach the final stage of redevelopment? So having a good understanding of what properties you have in the community is actually the first step that you can do towards the redevelopment. With respect to the brownfields inventory could also be helpful with respect to tracking specific property activities. We've seen that in many cases things not change that fast in the brownfields world, but they do change, and records it will be, records are not always easy to find. So having a good inventory where you track the activities for each particular property and what is the step of each particular property, that could also help the community again to, first of all, understand the risks associated with brownfields, but also understand the progress and make significant progress in your brownfields redevelopment. It also helps to have engage the community and have stewardship activities to increase awareness about brownfields and encourage the dialogue between the community and again, stakeholder engagement in the brownfields redevelopment world is really important. In many cases, and especially when some of the properties might be, let's say, under cleanup or under remediation, you can also have the inventory as a means to basically measure and meet environmental goals, keep track of, again, what is happening at each property, and also if you have, let's say, federal funding for brownfields redevelopment, that could also help you keep a good record for reporting purposes under EPA. Again, having a good inventory could also help market those properties to basically to attract developers. And again, advertising the properties, what is the stage of this property, what are the characteristics associated with a brownfield site, could make this more attractive, could basically attract more developers in the area. And of course, the last part with respect to having a good brownfields inventory has to do with demonstrating what are, for example, the economic returns. So what is the impact of having those sites redeveloped? So that you could also use the inventory to showcase what is the progress that you're making with respect to brownfield sites and what are the impacts and the benefits of redeveloping those sites. And for Connecticut, you can also, we have a program here in Connecticut that basically you get credits for having a brownfields inventory under a sustainable city program. So you can utilize that to get additional credit. So some key considerations when developing an inventory, some things to consider is, first of all, that brownfield properties could be publicly owned properties, right? But they could also be privately owned properties, right? So in many cases, once you start developing the inventory, you have to think about, all right, well, is this list going to be publicly available, or is this list going to be a list that we have, that the town has or the community has for internal purposes? So, and I'm breaking this up because in many cases, when you have private properties, you have to make sure that there is the owner's consent before you publicize a list like that, a list of brownfield sites with private properties, because of the stigma associated with a property identified as a brownfield site. So you have to think about, all right, is this list going to be, let's say, on a website, or is this list going to be an internal list that we're going to use to track progress on our brownfield sites? And then you have to think about, all right, well, this list, what is going to be the format, right? It's going to be just an Excel spreadsheet, or is it going to be a GIS map? Is it going to be a report? And the degree of detail that you want to include there. So those are first things that you have to kind of start thinking when developing your inventory. And again, related to the purpose and the scope of having an inventory, in many cases, again, we use this as a first step to identify sites and prioritize brownfield sites to go after an EPA grant opportunity. And if you have, let's say, multiple sites in your community identified as brownfields, then you are in a good position to put together a community-wide EPA assessment grant to target multiple brownfield sites in your community. And the last thing we have to consider is, first of all, the maintenance. Who is going to maintain the inventory? This is a dynamic document, right? It's changing. It's changing constantly, and that depends on the progress that you're making on your brownfield sites. So some sites that, for example, if you developed a list back in the 90s, some of the sites might be already redeveloped, right? So some other sites might have to be included in the list. So having a good maintenance and continuously updating the inventory is a very, very important step. So how do we even start? First of all, the key concept here is to identify sites at the very beginning, right? Identify sites that meet the definition of a brownfield site. EPA's definition, which applies basically to nationally, is a property or the expansion, the redevelopment or reuse of which may have been complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. So that is the federal definition of a brownfield site, and then we also have the state definitions. So within New England, only 2 states have specific definitions for brownfield sites, and those are Vermont and Connecticut. The other states, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, they do follow the EPA's definition. But basically, the concept is the same. The definition basically outlines a site that could be abandoned or could be underutilized, where there is contamination or potential presence of contamination. So those are the key considerations that you have to start thinking about when identifying properties as brownfields. So what is that you're looking for? Again, when you have a site, if it's a site that is abandoned, right, that could be a candidate. If it's a site that is active, right, but it's not fully active, it's underutilized, that could also be a brownfield site. What is the most important here is that one of the two, being abandoned or underutilized, is combined with suspicion of contamination. Right? There has to be some kind of perception of contamination that is associated with the previous activities at the site. So usually we see this, for example, in industrial or commercial properties. So you will not really find this in a residential property. So typically brownfields are former industrial or commercial properties where they might be suspected contamination, and then they could be either abandoned or underutilized. Another indicator that we often see in the brownfields world is tax delinquency. So in many cases, when there is a privately owned site that meets the criteria of like being abandoned or underutilized and the contamination, we often see that also the owner does not pay taxes, so that the property is tax delinquent. So that is often an indicator to search and find more information about the site. And we've seen that is also, it's very correlated with brownfields. And in many cases, if it's a property that is blighted and there's a significant conflict with the master plan of the community, that could also be an indicator of a brownfield site. But this is kind of like the rationale of how to go about this, how to identify sites within your community that could meet the EPA, the brownfields definition. So for example, if we see, let's take an example here, or let's see an example here where we have on the left side on the left picture, we do have an old gas station, and on the right side of the picture we do have a new gas station that it seems to be active. So the key considerations here, the key concepts to ask is, first of all, is it a real property, right? It's a real property in both cases. Is there any potential contamination here? Well, gas stations, right? They're handling petroleum products. They do have underground storage tanks. So there's definitely potential for contamination here in both cases. But is the property abandoned or underutilized? That's the last criterion that we have to think about. So obviously, in the left picture, it's obvious that the property is not longer in use, right? So it looks abandoned. On the right side, it's an active facility. So in that case, the left side is a brownfield because it meets all three criteria, right? And on the right side, that is not a brownfield. It's probably a privately owned site that is fully active. There might be some suspected contamination, but if there's a liable party responsible for contamination, then that we cannot say that this is a brownfield. It's a fully active facility, could be potentially contaminated, but that does not make it a brownfield site. So that's the most important distinction here, understanding which sites can be brownfields and which sites are basically privately owned sites with some suspicion of contamination. Now, where to start from? So basically, if the town or if the community does not have a previous brownfields inventory, it might be challenging to start, let's say, identifying sites. That's why the first thing here is to basically ask the town or the city if there is any previous brownfields list available. If there is a previous list available at the town, you can definitely start from that and see which sites should still be in the list and which sites have been redeveloped. So that is definitely a very good starting point. There are also state inventories and other state lists. I have here different links for state inventories and potentially contaminated lists from all New England states. We'll be sending the PowerPoint after the presentation, so you will have access to those websites. So essentially, in many cases, you may have a state inventory, right, with brownfield sites. Again, that inventory, the state inventories are basically lists where sites have sites where they've entered a specific program. It might be EPA's program, it might be a state program. So that is also a good starting point, but that does not mean necessarily that those lists include every single site within your community. So you can take a look into those and start identifying some properties, but there's probably more that you need to add there. There could be other lists with potentially contaminated sites that you can actually, again, start from that and see if that property meets the criteria of the brownfields definition, and then hence kind of like, identifying more sites. Some things to think about here, you might see sites listed there that are residential properties. Typically, those are not brownfields because there is no associated contamination or extensive contamination with a residential property, unless there is something very specific. So if you see a residential property and there is an exception to that, right, then it's usually not a brownfield. So we typically we're looking for properties that are industrial or commercial. Now, you might also see sites in the national priorities lists, in the NPL list or Superfund sites. Those are a separate category and they should not be included in the brownfields inventory because those are regulated by the EPA. So again, NPL sites or Superfund sites are a separate category, separate list. They're not they should not be included in the brownfields inventory because, again, they're regulated by the EPA. And you might also find sites that are privately owned with reported releases that are still in use. Again, if there is a liable party responsible for the cleanup, then that site, we typically don't say that this is a brownfield site. If it's fully in use and there is a liable party. So those should be, again, excluded from the list. And then at the end, you might also find redeveloped properties, which are completed projects, essentially. So those are some things just to keep in mind when you're developing your brownfields inventory. So basically, I have here some examples of like state inventories. Massachusetts has a map and a list, an Excel list where you can find online, and also Connecticut has an Excel list with different sites. Again, those sites have entered either a federal or state program, so you can definitely take a look at those and see, first of all, if they're active brownfields or redeveloped brownfields, but they definitely serve as a very good starting point. Some additional resources on how to find more properties. Again, tax delinquent properties, right? So tax delinquent properties, as we said, could be an indicator. Tax delinquency could be an indicator for a brownfield site. So you can ask the tax assessors for a list of sites that are tax delinquent and focus only on the industrial or commercial properties. And those could, again, they will need more investigation, but it could be a list that where you can start from. Vacant properties, again, if the town has a list of vacant properties, you can also take a look at those to start identifying, which sites are brownfields. And then you can also look online on EPA EJ screen and Environ Atlas. Both mapping tools have layers with respect to brownfields. Again, those sites identified there, they have entered EPA's program. So those are sites that are currently under investigation or remediation. And of course, talking with different stakeholders, talking with the community, they can also point to different sites that you might not be aware of. So definitely engage the community into the process, because they might also have other ideas and other sites in mind that they're not reported in any list. So basically, doing a full investigation, starting from previous lists, state lists, and to see what is publicly available, right? What properties are listed in a state or a federal list, and then starting to build the inventory from that. Now, once you have, let's say you have developed a preliminary list of sites, then you have to go side by side to see if this is a brownfield, if that meets the brownfields criteria, right? The brownfields definition. So to do that, it involves a lot of legwork, definitely, and a lot of time. And you cannot always visit all the sites, right? So in many cases, you might need to use Google Maps to see what is happening there, or Google Earth. Take a look at the property cards or like tax information. Ask the town officials or ask other stakeholders. Again, of course, visit the site, but if that's not always easy, then you can rely on like different web applications to gather information. And basically, once you combine all the information, we have to make a selection. Well, is the site a brownfield or not? So once you have that list of addresses with the sites that you consider brownfields, then you can start building the additional parameters that go into the inventory. What could those be? First of all, the name of the site, right, and the address. You could also include the parcel number. Who is the owner? Is the city or the town, or is it a private owner? You can definitely include this information. What is the size of the property? What is the acreage? What is the status of the site? We'll talk a little bit more about that. What do we mean by status? What is the type? Is it an industrial? Well, residential cannot be here, so that is not, let's say, typically not one of the types here. Is it a former landfill? Is it a commercial property? What is the zoning there? That is very important information, thinking about the development process, right? So the inventory should be a tool that you have to inform next steps, to inform the redevelopment process of a brownfield site. What is the tax status? Again, that is very important information. In many cases, when you have a tax delinquent property, then the town can also move to foreclosure, so that is useful to have there. Are there existing buildings, and what is the square footage of those buildings? Do you have any site photos, any site documents available? So those could be some example categories that you can include there. Of course, you can build more from that, but let's first talk a little bit about the status. What do we mean by status? So essentially, it's really useful to identify what is the progress, what is the, let's say, under which stage is the brownfield site. When we say here inactive, for example, this is a site where you have done basically nothing. It just stands there. There is the contamination there is not known. Nobody has done anything about this. So that we could say that this is an inactive site. You could also break things down with respect to the environmental investigation process and say that this is under a phase 1 site environmental investigation, under phase 2 environmental site investigation, phase 3. And then you can also say that, okay, well, this site, we have started the cleanup here, so the site is under remediation. Or the cleanup has been completed and then it's under redevelopment or is pending redevelopment. Or the site is complete, then you have a completed project there. So basically having an Excel template with like a drop-down menu where you can select, okay, well, at the moment, this site is, let's say, in phase 1. After 6 months, this might change. So you have to go back and update the status of the site. And let's say we started the phase 2, so the site is under phase 2 at the moment. So it's really useful to have that status column here to basically see, okay, well, to basically track the progress of the investigation, cleanup, and redevelopment of the brownfield. Then with respect to the site type, again, it could be various like different things here from like, that refers to essentially the past use of the site. Did it used to be an industrial site? Did it used to be, a school or a mill site? That is also useful information to have there. And again, with respect to the tax payment status, we talked about current or delinquent, if there are existing buildings, if you have like site photos or site documents that are available for the site. Now, those are some basic categories that you can include, but again, you can build more, you can add more parameters there. For example, some things to consider. Is a site in a floodplain? That is very, very important with respect to their development, right? Is a site in an opportunity zone or in an environmental justice community? Is a site in a transit-oriented development zone? Do we have parking space available? Does the property, is it under a federal or state program? Is there any environmental, let's say, a licensed environmental professional included there, and other details, other notes with respect to the sites. So again, those are things that you can think about, and add to the Brownfields inventory. Now I have here, I am not sure we're going to have a lot of time to go over this in detail, but basically I have included here how to gather information, for example, with respect to how to find the owner. You can definitely check the property card. How to find the zoning. You can go to the zoning maps. How to find information with respect to the floodplains. So you can go to the FEMA's website. So basically, you can have this as a source of information to go back and say, okay, well, how do we gather the information needed there? With respect to environmental justice communities, if there is a state designation, so for example, only 3 states have an environmental justice designation at the moment: Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So you can, I have here the link so that you can go back to their website and see if the site is included in one of the environmental justice communities. Tax delinquency, again, from the tax assessor's office. And then the environmental documents you can find from the environmental authorities databases. And the last thing that I would like to mention here with respect to the inventories, there are tools available that are web-based. So one example is the Brownfield inventory tool from the Kansas State University TAB program. They do have an online tool where you can add your information and create the inventory there. There is also another tool from the University of Louisville where they call this a Brownfields tracker. And again, that is an online web-based tool where you can add information on your brownfield sites, locate them, and have this as an online database where you sign in with your credentials and you access the information. So those things are available, that are out there, and just, if you need more information, happy to discuss more about this. And I also wanted to mention that we can help you develop the inventory. We actually support those type of projects through our municipal assistance program. We do this usually in the spring semester, and again, we're also planning to have a summer TAB municipal assistance program. So one of the projects that we can support has to do with developing a brownfield inventory for your communities. So besides other technical projects like summaries of environmental conditions or environmental assessments, phase 2 scope of works, redevelopment plans, community engagement plans for and outreach materials, but keep in mind that we can also help you develop the inventory. We can have our students work on this as a project as a course project, and do all this investigation and research for you. So I'm sharing our contacts here. Our director of the program, Professor Maria Chrysokou. Feel free to reach out to Marisa as well, and myself. You can reach out to my email directly, or you can reach out to the TAB's email as well. So with that, I'd like to open the time for questions. Let me see if we have any questions here. I don't see anything in the questions box or in the chat. So I don't see any questions. Dave, is it something that I don't see here? All right. Okay, so it seems that there is no questions in the chat. So hopefully you found this useful. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. And we're also happy to help you and support any brownfields inventories through our municipal assistance program as well. So I'll be uploading the presentation on our website, and you'll also be receiving the slides after the webinar. Thank you very much for attending, and hopefully you found this useful. Thank you.
Pele, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah.
Sure. I was having a problem. My audio was connected to something else when I was talking, but
Okay.
it wasn't.
Yeah, they didn't really have any questions. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, there wasn't anything.
Okay. So
No.
that's fine.
Good.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Great.
that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. No problem, Pele. Talk to you soon.